gigantic, if not bigger.
The biggest mistake that everybody makes when they try to compete with us is they try to compete with us.
The UFC started in 1993, 27 years ago. We started 9 years ago.
It is literally larger than the UFC worldwide.
I'm seeing one championship over F1, over NFL, over NBA, legit behemoths.
These guys come out and they just start throwing money around and start trying to be the UFC. The first thing you have to do when you start a business is know exactly who you are.
We're 180 degrees opposite in everything we do.
You see, it's not only a viewership war, but a cultural one.
Unfortunately, I feel that some organizations around the world, in the quest for the dollar, have thrown all morality and values out the door, disrespecting people's religion, death threats to their kids.
Breaking a bus with a dolly, beat up women, hit and run accident with a pregnant lady, steroids, cocaine. You know, organizations say no problem, as long as you sell pay-per-view dollars, I don't really care.
They're selling fights. We're unleashing heroes.
All right, you want to fight? We'll fight.
When a guy like Eddie Alvarez gets KO'd, or a guy like Sage Northcutt gets KO'd, or a guy like Mighty Mouse gets tagged, you're showing the whole world what one is doing is kind of like the future of the sport.
And yet, at a certain point in time, the man who built it all was ready to burn it down.
I was within a day of quitting.
I just remember thinking to myself after 3 years, like, this is going nowhere. And all I was doing was burning cash. And picked up the phone, I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom,
I think I'm gonna quit.
And my mom's like, you see? I told you, you should listen to mommy.
And obviously that hurt. I was taken aback. I thought she would spend an hour convincing me to follow my passion and live my dreams and all this stuff. And at the very end of the conversation, I remember very well, she said, why don't you just quit? I hung up the phone and I started thinking about, why don't I just quit?
I have mixed feelings about Thailand. Growing up as a child, I had a loving home and a family, and then it all disintegrated and went to nothing.
Chacha was nothing. He often got into trouble.
I was sent to the principal's office more times than I can count. I was suspended for fighting, put in detention.
And I was always a mediocre student, probably bottom 1/3 of my class.
And so I always thought, oh, well, I'm not very bright.
At the same time, he has a strong sense of justice. He couldn't ignore meanness or bullying. So defend those people, he ended up fighting a lot.
And my mom was always in the principal's office.
Despite me being a total screw up.
the one thing she always said, she said, Chatri, you're gonna grow up to help the world. Of course, when I'm 12 years old, rebellious, I'm like, what is this motherly gibberish, right?
But not everyone was so supportive. I remember that breakfast as if it were yesterday. I remember the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the air. I remember how his hair was parted neatly to one side. I remember staring at the cracks on our wooden dining table. For some odd reason, he asked me that day what I wanted to do in life. It was the first and last time he would ever ask me. I answered softly that I wanted to be a doctor. He scoffed at me before ignoring me for the rest of breakfast. I remember that deafening silence that echoed between us. But despite all that, there is one thing that they bonded over.
So when I was around 8 or 9 years old, my father took me to Lumpini Stadium, which is the Mecca of Muay Thai. I walked in and
Thousands of people screaming and chanting, and
the atmosphere was electrifying. I watched the fighters in the ring. They moved with such grace and beauty and power.
Literally ignited something in my soul that I just loved. I guess it's the universe's way of telling you what you should be doing.
Right away, I wanted to do Muay Thai, and I came home and to my mom, and my mom's this very conservative Japanese lady. She said, absolutely not.
I didn't support Chacha at all. I don't like grafting, punching, kicking.
Eventually, when I was around 13 years old or so, my father took me to Sipiao Tong Gym, which at the time was the #1 Muay Thai gym by far in the entire country.
Everyone was a monster and a beast in that gym. And here I was, a little kid trying to learn.
I remember my first day at Sipiao Tong. The heavy bags were filled with sand, packed tight, because our grandmaster really believed in strengthening the bones in the shin. So every kick, my shins, my feet, it was just unbelievable pain. And I remember thinking to myself, it was going to be impossible. I wanted to quit. It was the toughest training I'd ever experienced in my entire life. But the crazy thing is, after the training, I never felt so alive.
The one thing that has really dawned upon me is how martial arts really is about the journey of continuous self-improvement. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It is not about fighting.
It changed me. It made me more humble. It made me more disciplined. It gave me a focus.
But just like the rest of Asia, Chatri's world was about to explode.
Probably the toughest time in my life was during the Asian financial crisis.
The Asian financial crisis hit in the 90s, and literally 2/3 of the banks in Thailand went under, and there's no such thing as FDIC insurance in Thailand. So when you lost your life savings, you lost everything.
It was a very, 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 very dark time in our lives.
Your dad went bankrupt.
Yeah.
He ended up selling fruit in the street.
Yeah.
What went through your mind?
And then my father lost everything, our home, our car.
We went from well-to-do to literally struggling for the next day's meal.
And I remember distinctly how there was no money at home anymore, and my parents were fighting a lot.
My father was a very prideful man, too proud to say sorry, could admit that he couldn't feed his family. Literally, he just walked away one day and just never came back home.
Leaving my younger brother, myself, and my mother to fend for ourselves with virtually nothing.
I was so scared and worried. I couldn't sleep.
I'd never seen my mom cry until that moment.
It was the worst and most difficult moment of my family.
To watch my mother not eat because she wanted to give food to her children.
Just cry hopelessly, sobbing in tears, and broke my heart in a million pieces. I'll never forget it. There we were, left with literally nothing.
But I also remember that was the last time I cried, because I was crying and I was like, man, I can't believe this is my life. And
I remember the exact words my mom used was, Chatri, this is wartime.
My mother said, Chatri, you're the oldest son, and it's your duty to rescue us or take us out of poverty. Why don't you go to America, figure things out, and try to bring the whole family out of poverty? And try your best to get into Harvard, and then you can get a great, stable job, and then you can bring the rest of the family to America.
I said to myself, there is no way in hell I'm going to let my mom down. I am going to be unbreakable.
And the only thing that I really had was my martial arts training. The mental strength, the discipline, the focus, the courage, and most importantly, an unbreakable will, a warrior spirit to conquer adversity in life.
The defining moments of our lives is what we decide to do, what we say to ourselves in our worst moments in life.
And I remember thinking to myself, I never want to see my mother ever cry.
So now, all Chatri had to do was get into Harvard.
But I didn't believe in myself at all. I wasn't an academic in any way. I was, for the vast majority of my elementary, middle school, high school, I was bottom 1/3. So I didn't have any confidence in my abilities academically. But my mother, she said, Chatri, I really believe in you, and this is the path that the family needs to take. And I really thought if I make a shitload of money,
if I could be really, really rich, then my mom would not suffer, and my younger brother wouldn't suffer.
So Chatri attends Tufts University first, and once he graduates, applies to Harvard Business School.
And I remember when I got the acceptance letter, I just thought it was a fluke, and I thought, there's just no way they made a mistake.
I got into Harvard, and I really don't know how. It was probably there were probably only 3 people from Thailand applying that year or something, and maybe I was the best out of the 3. I have no idea, just total fluke.
But Chatri didn't want to go.
I remember for weeks, I was telling my mom I'm not going to go because A, we don't have the money, and B, I'm not smart enough, and if I borrow money, I'm going to get kicked out.
And my mom just said, Chatri, I believe in you. When you go there, you'll figure it out.
Obviously, I believe in Chatri's capability and capacity.
She really believed me when I didn't believe in myself, and
I don't want him to give up his opportunity.
That first week at Harvard, I came with a suitcase with all my life's belongings and about $1,000. I had to figure out very quickly how I was going to pay for school fees, for books, for my living expenses. And
Chatri, me, and another friend of ours used to be some of the poorest people in the class at business school.
I remember being very ashamed of my background, and I didn't want to tell people.
So the first thing I did is I created a spreadsheet of daily expenses.
And I calculated the bare minimum that I could spend was $4.
$4.30 was my average. Every day, my goal was I would write down exactly what I spent, and I would try to beat that average.
You were walking and running everywhere you went.
I couldn't afford the subway. I couldn't afford taxis. I couldn't afford anything. And
you
so
delivered Chinese food.
Yes, I did that. I taught Muay Thai. I did all these things just to survive.
And if I beat that $4, let's say if I came at $3.57, I would be ecstatic.
And so it became a challenge for myself in this Excel spreadsheet of beating this number.
So that $4 number is, imprinted in my brain forever.
Any excess money I received went to my mother.
But the money he sends to his mother is not enough to get her out of poverty, so she soon finds herself out of options.
It got so bad that my mom ended up living with me in the second year in my dorm room.
I stayed Chatri's dorm for 5 in the second year.
My mom slept on the bed and I slept on the floor. She had to wait for me in between classes to get into the dorm.
And obviously the school administration had no idea. If they did, I would probably have gotten expelled.
He's a caring person and willing to sacrifice for everything.
When I was in my darkest days, living on $4 a day, 1 meal a day in America, I remember a couple of times when I wanted to quit.
We were in the dorm room and it was, I don't know, 11 p.m. at night or whatever, midnight, and we were just gonna go to sleep. And I remember the lights were off, I was sleeping on the floor, my mom's in the bed, and we're just talking. And my mom's like, when we get through all this, I wanna live in New York City. And I think to myself, how can my mom even think of that? New York City is the most expensive city in the world, and here we are living on $4 a day. Like, why would she even say these things? Now I look back on it, by being a dreamer and by being hopeful, injecting your life with hope, it gives you fight for another day. And that was what my mom was doing to me.
Even the worst times, my mother would always teach me to dream. She used to always tell me, no matter what happens in life, don't lose your heart.
I was so proud of Chatri when he graduated from Harvard. And I told him, this is the beginning of your real life. So be humble so that you can see well.
And as he nears graduation, Chatri receives multiple six-figure job offers.
And I had 4 or 5 job offers, and they're $250,000 job offers or whatever it is, and the safe thing was to do that. But
One of my best friends, Soon Lu, approached me in our last year of business school and said, Chatri, hey, let's start a company together. And I said, that's so crazy. We have no money, we're poor, there's no way we're starting a company. He goes, fine, let's just work on a business plan together. So I said, okay, I'll work on a business plan with you. And when I told my mom this, my mom was initially very, very upset.
She was like, Chatri, no, your father just went bankrupt. You saw that. Why would you want to start a company? Go, you have these safe job offers, go and work your way up the ladder.
So Chatri has a choice to make between following his friend or listening to his mother.
And I turned all my job offers down, and I went to Silicon Valley, and my mom was gonna shoot me.
And I said, Mom, just gotta believe, let's go.
There's no furniture in the office. We cannot afford to buy bed. So we slept on a sleeping bag on the floor, and there are frozen food as our meal.
3 years later and $40 million in venture capital later, we had 150 employees.
Eventually, the business got sold for $20 million, your first taste of real big money.
I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. And I said, you know what? I want to go work on Wall Street and learn how to invest.
And that's exactly what he does. He starts working for a hedge fund and learns to invest.
And I bought my mom an apartment in New York, and I paid for my brother's university fees. I was able to get the whole family out of poverty.
Roll forward a few years, I ended up launching my own hedge fund. And so I was investing all over the world, buying and selling companies. I was on top of the world on paper.
But every day I knew that something was missing. There was just this sense of emptiness. I would say almost depression.
I climbed to the top of Wall Street. I owned a $500 million business, making millions a year. And I was depressed inside. I didn't understand the concept of ikigai at that point.
Ikigai is a Japanese concept that translates to a reason for being. It refers to the intersection of 4 key elements: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for.
And then I just started thinking about my life. Because when I was dirt poor, I thought, if I make a lot of money, I'll be happy, because all your problems will be solved. And so I was sitting there and I'm like, why is it that I'm not happy?
Then I went downstairs to the sushi restaurant by myself.
Then I sat there and I just thought to myself, what is the point of my life? I'm buying and selling and shorting companies around the world. What value am I giving?
I know thinking of money never satisfies Chatri. He is very philosophical person.
So I climbed up to the top of the mountain and I realized it's a damn wrong mountain. I'm like, holy cow, how am I gonna get down?
And the craziest thing is my mom's words again echo that I'm supposed to help people. And I asked myself that question, am I helping people? And I decided I'm going to leave Wall Street. And I came down to something very simple. The meaning of life is the love we share and the impact we make. And that's it. Nothing else matters.
The lessons of martial arts, the gifts of martial arts are so precious that I really believe it's the greatest platform to unleash human potential.
And then I called my mom and said, Mom, I'm going to retire from Wall Street and I'm gonna go chase martial arts.
She said, Chatri, martial arts and fighting business is done by mafia.
And she was afraid that I was gonna get killed by the mafia.
You come from poverty, Chatri. You got to Harvard Business School, got your MBA. You made it out. You're one of the few people who made it out.
I thought Chatri was crazy, leaving Wall Street, but I wasn't surprised about it.
And I said, Mom, this is not my ikigai.
The thing that I love most is martial arts, and I want to figure out a way that I can live through martial arts and help people.
So I said, Mom, I have to go live my ikigai. I don't want to be that warrior who ran away from the love of his life because he saw a tiger. I want to unleash greatness in the world through the beauty and the power of martial arts.
Whether I disagree with him or not, he always chooses his own path.
Now remember, the fourth component of the Ikigai is what you can be paid for. And in choosing martial arts, Chatri saw a tremendous business opportunity.
I looked at every region of the world and I saw every region of the world had multi-billion-dollar sports media properties.
So if you go to America, it's NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball and the like. You go to Europe, it's F1 and Champions League and EPL. And these are all worth $50 to $100 billion.
You come to Asia, at the time, there was nothing.
And no one had ever tried to unite 4 billion people, the world's largest population base, around one sports property.
Then I said, man, but Asia's the home of martial arts for 5,000 years. Japan has karate,
Korea, Taekwondo, China, Kung Fu, Russia, Sambo, Thailand, Muay Thai, Indonesia, Silat, Philippines, boxing and Kali, and the list goes on and on.
So the idea finally hit you.
So I said, okay, I am going to start Asia's first multi-billion-dollar global sports media property. I almost feel like the Forrest Gump of martial arts. I was very naive to think I could pull this off.
How did you go about building up that roster of credible fighters?
I didn't envision this. I just kept running and running and running.
So I literally went to the States and got US Olympians to come over to Singapore. I went to Thailand, brought Muay Thai world champions. I went to Japan and brought mixed martial arts world champions. I went to Brazil, brought Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt world champions, and I convinced them to move to Singapore.
I'll be upfront. I mean, the first 3 years was the hardest experience I'd ever gone through. I literally was rejected by every single person, thousands of rejections.
Who needed convincing? What did you need to do?
When I talk to governments, oh, we don't like sports. When I talk to investors, Asians don't like sports. Employees, I would give an offer, they would say yes, and then they would talk to their parents that same day, and then they'd come back and say, sorry, I can't join because there's no such thing as sports in Asia.
Failure after failure after failure, rejection after rejection after rejection. Chatri, you're stupid. Chatri, you're crazy. Chatri, you'll never succeed.
So the first 3 years is literally like losing tons of money, my own money and my friend's money. At the end of the third year, I called my mom and I was literally gonna quit.
How close do you think you were to actually quitting?
No, that day, if my mom had used the wrong words with me, I think I would have quit.
Really?
But a mom knows best.
It was a very short call. She said, Chatri, why don't you just quit then? And then after that, we hung up and I started thinking about, why don't I just quit? And then I just go back to the original plan of why did I even start this company?
And then just my fire just raged huge. There's no way I'm gonna quit. Really? This is my greatest passion in life. What is my mom talking about?
Being intrinsic, listening to your soul, listening to your heart, not what your mom tells you, not what your dad, not what your husband, not what your boyfriend, not what your girlfriend, not what your wife tells you, not what society tells you to do. But you do it because you genuinely believe that's what you want to do and that's how you want to express your soul. That's what you want to do with your life. At the end of the day, we all leave this beautiful earth. What do you want to do with your life?
I don't care if everyone tells me it's impossible. I don't care if the world shuts me down. You know, one championship is not a startup to me. This is my life.
So how did you turn it around?
As Charles Darwin said it best, you know, it's not the strongest or the smartest that survive. It's the species that adapts to change the most efficiently.
Facebook, unbeknownst to me, decided to make a big bet on Asia. Suddenly, the window to the world became this, all over the world. We're gonna bet the farm on Facebook. We started putting videos on Facebook and went viral, and our fan base exploded around the world.
And then literally our video views in 2014 went from 300,000 for the whole year to 5 billion.
Wow.
In the next few years.
300,000 to 5 billion.
I would take the stats and go to the TV broadcasters and go, hey, Mr. Broadcaster, take a look. The content is flying. They were like, okay, well, we'll give you a shot on TV. Our numbers exploded on TV as well.
And the success on TV attracts more investors.
Blue chip institutional investors like Sequoia Capital, Guggenheim, like Qatar Investment Authority, like Temasek. These are like the very best and smartest investors in the world.
In 2015, to address the issue of weight cutting, One implements hydration tests.
They check your hydration levels.
They check your hydration levels, yep.
He's smart. It's the right way to do it. We should have done it a long time ago in the UFC.
In 2016, a 19-year-old Angela Lee becomes champion in the first women's world title fight.
Angela, Trusted sister,
A year later, One puts on the first submission grappling fight, followed in 2018 by the first Muay Thai and kickboxing fights. The same year, One makes a historical trade with the UFC to get one of the greatest fighters of all time, Demetrius Johnson. To the general surprise, he ends up getting knocked out for the first time in his career against Adriano Moraes. And then there's one more deal that opened the gate to the American market.
And you signed a deal with Amazon recently.
It's the most important deal in the history of the company.
We're now Asia's largest billion-dollar global sports property. When I look at where we are as a business and where I want to go, we're still just scratching the surface.
But despite the success of One, there's still one thing that Chatri couldn't make peace with.
I hadn't seen my father in decades, ever since he left. I don't know, I wanted to find out why did he abandon the family. I had a lot of questions, and I held on to a lot of anger for many, many years. I went to go search for him.
And I found him, he was dirt poor, and he was old and frail.
We went to dinner, it was awkward. But I asked him, why did you throw us away? My father was a very proud Asian man, and the fact that he couldn't put food on the table for his own wife and kids killed him. Just wrecked him inside. And that it was just much easier to escape everything. When I was a kid, thinking to myself, hey, he threw us away. But in actuality, he was going through his own demons, if you will, of not being able to provide. I remember feeling sadness for him, and I also really felt deep empathy.
Did you forgive him?
I did come to a deeper understanding, and I forgave him. But the saddest part was I thought we had time. But actually we didn't. He ended up getting a stroke and eventually passed away. At his funeral, I gave the eulogy. We cremated him because he's Buddhist. We cremated him. And so when I was reflecting on the flight back home after my father's funeral, tried to take everything that bad happened and I tried to take all the beautiful lessons. So I said, Dad, and I was, speaking to him, because of what you did, I have fire in my belly. Because of that, I have gratitude. Because of that, I have a warrior spirit. Because of that, I have confidence in myself.
For the first time in history, we are bringing the very best martial arts on the planet to America.
หนูทนรอแฟนๆชาวอเมริกันมาดูหนูไม่ไหวแล้วค่ะ
Being an American on the global stage of One Championship in the US, it's just amazing.
To see everything that we dream for, One Championship here in America, it's a fantastic moment.
One of the special things about sports properties globally, if you look at it, is they create local heroes that ignite the masses.
We have heroes like Angela Lee, who is one of the best pound-for-pound female world champions on the planet.
We also have Rook Tang, is arguably the best pound-for-pound striker on the planet today. He knocks everyone out. He's like a mini Mike Tyson.
All of our heroes have gone through these incredible life stories, conquering poverty, tragedy, adversity, to become world champions. That can inspire anybody. A street kid in Manila, a doctor to become the best doctor, a young woman in India to become a CEO. All over the world can be inspired by those stories, because it's really about unleashing your greatness in life.
What is something you wish you could tell your 20-year-old self?
I always say that the path to greatness, for all of us, for every single person on this planet, is suffering. Suffering through failure, through adversity, through tragedy. It is that journey of suffering that brings out our greatness, so that we may be able to give back more than we receive, so that we can somehow leave this earth better off than how we found it.
It's just the very beginning of the one story. The dream is here. It's here. This is just the beginning.